China's view towards technology is rooted in its history. As far as the Chinese are concerned, they were the global superpower for centuries, for millennia. Then the Europeans turned up in the early 1800s with their industrialization and with their technology. And they were able to colonize China. In fact, they humiliated China. They called that period their century of humiliation. And the conclusion the Chinese came to was they fell behind technologically to the Europeans. That's why they were conquered. So once the Japanese were defeated and they reunified the country and kicked out all foreigners, what you find is the first thing Chinese did is they turned to the Soviets in order to develop technology. So actually they got quite a lot of technology in the 1950s, 1960s from the Soviet Union. But they weren't able to build upon that because of domestic unrest. So in the 1950s, late 1950s, the Great Leap Forward was a complete disaster. And then in the 1960s to the early 70s, what you find is Mao's Cultural Revolution. So there's a lot of instability within China, which didn't allow for technological development. Really, where China started to develop was the Open Reform era. So we're talking from 1979. And actually, that was the first time where scientists were not seen as anti-communist. Because prior to that, science and scientists, they were seen as Western. They were seen as anti-communist. After 1979, it even became okay to commercialize technology. Prior to that, what you had was research institutes, you had state-owned enterprises, and they dealt with technology. And in the modern era, what we see is China's made very good use of acquisitions. It's made extensive use of cyber theft and even espionage as well to leapfrog technological development. Probably the key institution when we look at China is the Chinese Academy of Sciences. This is probably the closest institute to America's DARPA. It's not exactly the same, but it's probably the closest China has, which is very similar to DARPA. The other thing to keep in mind is China had a strategy in 2015 called Made in China 2025, which was their attempt to make sure over 70% of what they manufacture is from domestic sources. So it was a strategy to upgrade China's manufacturing capabilities. And 10 years on, it's been a phenomenal success. Although there's one or two areas where China's still behind, what you find is when it comes to robotics, when it comes to semiconductor chips, China has made extensive progress in these areas. So yes, China has come a long way. China has finally managed to leave its history in the past. In quite a few areas, China's actually even leapfrogged America.